After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to look at the tomb. Look, there was a great earthquake, for an angel from the Lord came down from heaven. Coming to the stone, he rolled it away and sat on it. Now his face was like lightning, his clothes white as snow. The guards were so terrified of him that they shook with fear and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Don't be afraid. I know that you were looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here because he's been raised from the dead, just as he said. Come, see the place where they laid him. Now hurry, go and tell his disciples he's been raised from the dead. He's going on ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. I've given the message to you." With great fear and excitement, they hurried away from the tomb and ran to tell his disciples. But Jesus met them and greeted them. They came and grabbed his feet and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go and tell my brothers that I am going into Galilee. They will see me there." This is the resurrection gospel of Christ for the people of Christ. Thanks be to God. Amen. Please be seated. You know, today is a great day because it is the marking of a tradition unlike any other. And I'm not talking about the resurrection, I'm not talking about church, I'm not even talking about pastels or Easter ham or an egg hunt or whatever your favorite Easter tradition is, because today marks a day where we see more activity around a certain practice than any other. And of course, the practice that I'm talking about is your aunt on Facebook sharing a picture of Jesus saying, "Don't be afraid to share a picture of Jesus on Facebook." The only problem being that it's not Jesus, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. Also, Ewan McGregor, very famous Scottish actor, if you don't know Star Wars. Now, I think this is funny every time it happens. I never know when it's satirical, when it's real. I don't know. I just think it's hilarious. But here's the thing. Your aunt or mom or grandma or spouse or whoever does that probably knows that you also have a serious lapse of knowledge somewhere in your life, something that they know that you don't, that they think is ridiculous, that you don't know. So all of us have this lapse in knowledge. And now I think, especially in today's world, it's harder for us to be able to really navigate in the internet age with the addition of things like artificial intelligence. It's equally difficult, I think, to believe anything that we see because we never know what's real, but it's simultaneously easy to believe it because it could be real, because it seems so real. So what are we to do? Because here's the thing, this problem personified is really a problem of trust. We can laugh about silly memes on the internet, whatever, all that we want, but I think you recognize that this isn't just something that exists on the internet, it exists in our real life too. That it feels like for some reason, with every passing day, it has become more and more difficult to trust. How can I trust any news source? How can I trust anything I see on the internet? But then that makes its way deeper into my life. How can I trust any person? How do I know who I can trust? Because whether or not we like it, life forces us to trust people. You have to. There's no other option. You drove here, I'm guessing, and driving here is an act of trust. You trusted that the other people on the road would follow their rules, so you could get here safely. You trusted the people on the sidewalk would not jump out into the middle of the street. It involves trust. When you go to work, you trust that the people who do their job are doing their job so that you can effectively do your own job. At home, you're trusting the people in your household to do their chores, do their part, respect one another, live peacefully, all the things. We have to trust in life. When we go to school, we trust that it's a safe place for us, and we trust our teachers to teach us and to take care of us. But what's the problem here? The problem is families turn on each other, car accidents happen, schools aren't always the safest for our kids for a variety of reasons. So our trust fails all of the time in a variety of areas because we're human and other people are human as well. So how can we know who to trust? How can we know what to trust? The quick answer that you probably can come up with this is that you can trust someone when they've proven themselves trustworthy. We tend to be people who will peel back our trust until someone has earned it, and then we pass it, right? It's logic. It's common sense. That's what you do. But you probably also know that there have been people that have earned that trust and have broken it anyway. People, organizations, institutions, places that have broken your trust anyway, even though you trusted them. Sometimes that's the hardest pill to swallow because it's people we thought we could trust that turns out we can't. And I think if we could figure out some perfect formula or solution on being able to trust people, we would live with a lot more peace than we have right now. Because a lot of times, because of this difficulty, what's our solution? What's our answer? We trust nothing and we trust no one. That's a hard way to live. That's a hard way to live. Even for someone like me, if you know anything about Clifton Strengths Finders, on the Clifton Strengths Finders assessment, it spits out, I think there's 34 different themes that you can have as to what is your strength. But for you to have, it gives you your top 5 strengths, and for you to have the same top 5 strengths of somebody else is like one in a handful of million. It's really difficult to do. For me, one of my top 5 strengths is responsibility. That means if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I say I'm not going to do something, I'm not going to do it. I like to think that I'm trustworthy, and yet I also recognize I failed on that responsibility countless times in my life. At work, at home, in friendships, whatever. So even the folks that are among the most solid and most trustworthy the world has to offer still have their faults and still break our trust. Even Jesus Christ himself had his trustworthiness doubted. He had his trustworthiness doubted, of course, by his enemies, who quite frankly didn't really care whether or not he was trustworthy. They were just afraid of him. But his trustworthiness was even doubted by his closest friends, who earlier this week, when Jesus was arrested and beaten and killed, most of them had abandoned him. One of them had outright denied him and denied their friendship, and another one of them betrayed him and turned him in to have him killed. His trustworthiness was questioned at every turn. On Friday, he's beaten and killed. He's been dead all weekend. And the women who were there for Jesus until the very end go to the tomb, because the tomb that Jesus laid in their tradition, was not a permanent resting place. It was a temporary resting place until he would go to his permanent one. So the women arrive thinking that they're going to basically transport his body to take him to his final resting place, only to find out that that's not what's happening, because they see an angel sitting on top of the stone, just popping a squat, waiting for them to get there that morning, I guess. And the angel is glowing white, like lightning, the scripture says. And this angel is the first one who gets to declare the best news in the history of the universe. Because the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen." And this alone is the greatest news the world has ever known, and that is why we are here to celebrate today, and why we celebrate this not just today on Easter, but in every day of our lives as Christians. We are Easter people. We are people of resurrection. Because Jesus died the perfect death we could not die. He lived the perfect life we could not live. He defeated death as we could not, offers us this same resurrection today and in the life to come. All of this to say nothing, not a thing can stop God from loving you. Not a thing can stop God's grace. If death does not have the final say, then there's nothing you can do. There's nowhere you can go. There's no circumstance that you can face. There's nothing you can say that is going to stop God's love. Death can't do it. So nothing can stop God's love. And the most powerful force in the known world to this point that young and old alike have succumbed to and will succumb to, the power of death, has been rendered powerless by the love of Jesus. If God's love and grace goes into the grave, there is nowhere you can go that it's not going to find you. Even death has no say against the force of the love of Jesus. This alone is the greatest news ever. But just like what we see on the internet, just like our relationships, it still seems hard to trust. Maybe you have had a long-standing lack of difficulty, or a long-standing difficulty with this day because you just can't wrap your mind around the truth of it all. Or maybe you've accepted this day because you follow Christ, but you're still unsure of just this message in its entirety and its true and certain reality. That this isn't just a spiritual story that we tell, but this is a historical event. Because it is inherently hard to believe a person, God, came to earth, lived, never sinned, died, was dead, and then got up. That's hard to believe. That's a difficult claim. But I want to offer a thought that as the angel is announcing this wonderful news, as he shares this announcement with the women, he also shares a qualifier at the very end of this statement that I think we can overlook in all of this. Because the statement doesn't just end at "he has risen." Here's what the angel said: he is not here, he has risen, just as he said. Just as he said. This is not a situation where a man has died and somehow risen himself from the grave or some story. Jesus says, everything has happened exactly as I told you it was going to. Not only do I have the power over the grave, but I knew that this was going to happen before it happened. Jesus has predicted this in multiple instances in our stories and recollections of Jesus. The most dependable and trustworthy word that's ever come out of anybody's mouth came from the mouth of Jesus the Christ. He promised this was going to happen. He said it in Matthew 16. Jesus told his friends he would be delivered into the hands of religious and political leaders, be killed, and rise again. In Matthew 17, he does it again. In Mark 9, he does it. In Luke 18, he does it. He warned y'all. He said this was going to happen. So we don't just celebrate the greatest miracle in the history of the world, but when we look back on what can we trust and who can we trust, there is nothing we can trust more than a person who says, I'm going to die and rise from the dead, and then does it. There's no one we can trust more than a God-man who makes the most outrageous claim, the most outrageous promise in the history of the world, and makes it come true by nothing more than his own power, by nothing more than his unity with God. And I don't know, maybe you're like me. If you're like me, you love predictions. And I think we love predictions in the 21st century too, because with the internet and things like that, we can track them, right? People don't forget what you said way back when. And if the NFL draft is this week, I'm very excited. They come with receipts for whether they thought a player was going to be good or no good or whatever. We remember it forever. Some famous predictions for you. I didn't know this until I looked it up. Mark Twain predicted his own death over a year before it happened. He said this: I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It's coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. He died one day after Halley's Comet came. The next day. That's scary. In 1969, the New York Jets were 17-point underdogs facing the champion Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. But that didn't slow down the confidence of Jets quarterback Joe Namath, who famously guaranteed the Jets would win the Super Bowl. And they did, by a score of 16-7. If you like television and pop culture, you probably know that the Simpsons television show has kind of eerily predicted a scary amount of things that's happened in the world. They predicted the Trump presidency in the year 2000. In 1993, they predicted the murder hornets. In 1998, they predicted the merger between Fox and Disney. In 1995, they predicted the construction of the Shard in London over 15 years before they broke ground on it. Just to name a few. But we all know, on the other side of that are some predictions that didn't quite pan out the same. In 1946, movie producer Darryl Zanuck, who was, again, a movie producer, but what happened around this time? The at-home television set became popular, and he had this to say: television won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon tire of staring at a plywood box every night. Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime Video, Peacock, Hulu would all like a word. Because what's happened? The opposite. The movie-going industry is dying, and the at-home industry is thriving. In 2007, while Apple was getting ready to launch the first smartphone, Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft, said this: there is no chance that the iPhone will get any significant market share. No chance. Show of hands? Okay, here's my iPad. And who could forget Y2K, where a computer malfunction was going to basically spell the end of the world? Since people say stuff all of the time, we only give it any kind of weight when it turns out to be right, when it turns out to be trustworthy. And of course, we give it varying amounts of weight based on how much whether or not it comes true matters. But when do we listen to people, and when do we trust people? We trust them when they keep their word. But now when it comes to Jesus, we see someone who made the most outrageous claim that anyone's ever made, that he would be killed and rise from the dead, and he does, proving himself to be the most trustworthy person who's ever lived, showing us that God is more trustworthy than we can imagine. So what does that mean for you and for me? It means that when Jesus says something, take it to the bank. Take it to the bank. So when Jesus says that all of this is so that way we can have life and have it to the full, take it to the bank. When Jesus says he has come that we might have eternal life, take it to the bank. When he says that he desires mercy and not ritualistic sacrifice, take it to the bank. When he says all of those who are burdened and heavy laden, and in Jesus we will find rest, count on it. When he says the Spirit, the presence of God has been placed inside your mind, placed inside your spirit, placed inside your bodies, believe it. When he says you are a child of the Most High God, more precious than anything in all creation, believe it. It's true. Because Jesus said it. The words of Jesus, the actions of Jesus are proven trustworthy. They're not just trustworthy because somebody wrote them down 2,000 years ago. They're not just trustworthy because I read them every week. They're not just trustworthy because I'm telling you. They are trustworthy because Christ himself has proven himself trustworthy. Worthy of not just trusting to believe that, yes, what Jesus says is true, but trusting with our very lives, trusting with our sacrifice, trusting with our forgiveness, trusting that if we do as Jesus has shown us and as Jesus has said, life will only be better. It doesn't mean everything's going to go exactly the way we want it to. They killed the dude. They whipped him and beat him and hung him on a cross. Not ideal. And yet we can count on it. When we surrender to Jesus, life gets better. You see, it's hard to go through life with the heaviness of where do I put my trust and where do I put my hope and what can I count on? Because I can count on one hand all of the things that I can count on right now in my life. Maybe one finger. And some of us don't even get that. So what do we do with all of this heaviness? The hope that we long for, the trust that we want to place, the grace that we long for can be found in Jesus. In a world where it's so easy to find good news too good to be true, because it seems fishy. There's got to be a catch. There's got to be something we're not being told. Almost anything good is too good to be true. The good news of Easter is the trustworthiness of Jesus. The prediction and the resurrection of Christ promises us that the good news that I share with you today is too good not to be true. It's too good not to be true. Thanks be to God. Let us live a life of trust as a resurrection people, as Easter people, knowing that we are resurrected in this life and in the life to come. Nothing can touch us because of the good news we share today, and that is a good news too good to not be true. And since this is the good news that we celebrate today, more good news